Oh, sorry, I'm not even looking at the right. It's input. It's an input device. So map sensor 1. I click over here and I go over to map sensor 1. This is the map sensor that is connected to replace the stock one. Now the map sensor that's in the car is a 50 psi map sensor. So it measures everything from about negative 14 psi all the way up to 35 psi. So it doesn't measure a total. It doesn't measure up to, like, 50 psi. It measures up to 35 psi. It just has a range of 50 psi. So it goes from about negative 14.5 all the way up to 350. Now when this, by default, this was in kPa. So in that settings tab that I showed earlier, I changed it over to PSI, so which is pounds per square inch. So I changed it over to PSI so that I could read the numbers off the data sheet. Now I got the part number off the sensor, and I went online and I looked at AEM, because it's an AEM sensor. I went to AEM's website and I found the data sheet for that sensor. Since if I would have bought it and installed it, then it should have come with the data sheet. The data sheet shows all of these voltages here. So each one of these voltages, 0.5 volts, 1.5 volts, 2 volts, 2.5, 3, all the way up to 4.5 volts. So it's a 5 volt sensor pretty much. But at 4.5 volts, it's putting out it would be putting out 35.3, a maximum of 35.3 psi. So the engine, if it's putting out that 35.3 psi, that map sensor is outputting 4.5 volts to the car's computer, and that's how it reads it. It's not a very intelligent thing. The sensor basically just takes a pressure value and converts it into a voltage value, and for the software, for us, it just converts it to a number that we can understand, because the computer has no idea. It doesn't use this PSI number. It uses this voltage for calculations and stuff. So we have to change this to what we see on the data sheet, so that the computer would know that, okay, at 45 volts, there's this 35.3 PSI value. Actually, I should take back what I said earlier about the computer probably does use PSI, and there's formulas with PSI. I don't know how they did the formula specifically in the Haltech software, but depending on what your data sheet is, though, it would have voltages between 0.5 and 4.5. But what those voltages correspond to, if it's like kPa or if it's INHG or if it's PSI, whatever it is that they have on the data sheet, just change it to those values. I wouldn't trust using, there's calculators online and you can plug in, you're like, oh, I have kPa values and I want to see what they are in PSI. You could use them, but there's room for a little bit of error, because the calculator might round up when it's not supposed to round up, so you won't get that accurate of a number. It's best to let this do its own little internal calculation, put it on PSI, and then change these all individually. So that's the map sensor, and it's pretty easy to set up, really. I mean, you just go down the list, and I think it was every quarter volt, so it said like 0.25 and then 0.5, and it showed like at that voltage that the sensor is putting out, and it says it on the data sheet. It shows its corresponding PSI. So you would go down the PSI, or you get that PSI number and you plug it in here, and then you would look at 1.5 volts, go over, and like, okay, negative 2.2 psi. Look at 2 volts, you go over and you look at it on the paper, and it's okay. So 2 volts is 4 psi, and you keep going all the way up. So you do that for the map sensor. One of the other things that I changed, so right now, where's it at? It's on basic, I think.